Hey everyone, Mike Doloff, Chief Revenue Officer, Inflow Communications. I am excited to be with you today to talk about the state of UCaaS in 2021. We talk about unified communications all the time with companies all over the world, and we also work with all the main providers in this space, and there's often a ton of noise and to try to distill down what's really happening in this space, because there is a lot happening. That's what we're going to do right now. So let me talk first about what's going on in some of the players, okay? We've seen this trend over the last year to probably 3 years, I'd say now, of you've had kind of traditionally really strong voice providers, their telephony is their background in the UCaaS space, and then really strong collaboration providers that are really strong in video and meetings and messagings, converging into the middle. So UCaaS is absolutely becoming what it always should be, right? Which is unified communications as a service, but it's unifying those. So no longer do you have as many players that are really good only in one part of this, and that's their real offering. They're really coming together and having that full suite. And so the both category, as we call it, right? It's all of those. It's voice, video, messaging, and meetings. I would even say that obviously with the pandemic, video has accelerated up. Some organizations we talk to have video in meetings kind of on par with voice when it comes to importance for their business. So I wouldn't say that's the majority yet, but that's something that we're seeing. And so the equivalency between the importance of voice and video is really, I think, driving some of this as well. So that's one of the big changes that continues in 2021. The next, of course, if you think about, okay, well, who's in the both category? Well, Teams, right? Teams just announced this month in April 2021, 145 million monthly users. It's hard to wrap your head around. That's a lot of users. And so certainly committed, it seems like this go round with having a really strong UCaaS offering. We'll talk about Teams in a little bit later, but they're obviously one of the big ones in that central group. Zoom, another one. They just rolled out Zoom Phone. Everyone, of course, knows them for the meetings, right? They're a UCaaS player now. They have Zoom Phone, and that's been the case for, I think they rolled it out 18, 24 months ago now. Massive growth from them. Have really solidified themselves as an enterprise player in this space. They're ready. RingCentral has been doing really, really well in this space for a number of years. I think really, in my opinion, leading it for the last couple of years and continues to be up there as one of the top leaders with some new company now. And then you've got all these other players. 8x8's always been pretty strong in here. Vonage, Fuse, Dialpad, Cisco. Cisco's starting to come back up. GoToConnect. Avaya with their RingCentral offering. And you've got others like Mitel that have been more stronger in the telephony side, really moving aggressively into that both side, coming out with a stronger video play. So everyone's converging into that middle space, but I would say you've got three really core leaders between Zoom, Teams, and RingCentral, really leading the charge so far from what we see. When it comes to feature functionality, global scale, enterprise readiness, that's what we're seeing. So now that you have some sense of the landscape and what's going on, let me highlight a couple really key themes that we see happening, or conversations coming up pretty regularly. So the first one is around security. Security almost never came up in UCaaS a couple years ago. Now it's coming up a little bit more. I think some of it is the work from home trend from the pandemic of people trying to understand how secure. I've got voice communications and video communications, got more questions being asked from my executive team around security. Plus, I mean, security's been big in the tech space for forever. You pull up the news any given day, right? There's data breach. There's the SolarWinds thing recently, right? So, but you know what? Surprisingly, most people are just asking very basic security questions around UCaaS. Can it do SSO, and can it do two-factor authentication? That's the main things that are coming up from a security standpoint. And I would say I was hard-pressed. I couldn't think of anyone who couldn't do those. So it's pretty common. Pretty basic questions being asked, but that's coming up. Analytics, that's another one. Really wide range of capabilities in analytics in the UCaaS space. Some have really tremendous capabilities, and others pretty basic. Almost, in my opinion, too basic from some of the players. But people are looking at, historical, real-time, quality of service. So like, hey, how's my system performing? How are my calls and meetings doing? Also, we're starting to see more growth in the adoption analytics too. How many meetings, how many messages, who's using what, so I can understand where there's maybe more training needs or how effectively we're using a particular solution. So very wide range of analytics, but we see that coming up more and more. Third theme we see coming up, APIs. This is not a new one, but APIs and the ability for the UCaaS solution to be part of the broader technology platform, integrating with other Office Suite applications, calendaring, CRMs. Nothing new there, but we're definitely seeing one of the core questions people are asking is, can it help me streamline some of my workflow, my workers' ability to be, within one application instead of two, and things like that. That's coming up more and more. The companies that are doing well generally have a really nice API story, and customers are asking more for more questions around this to better understand that. The fourth, the unified communications and contact center relationship is really in an interesting spot. I would say there's three types of relationships between UC tech and the contact center tech. There's the approach that's diminishing. I'll start with that one. You're seeing a lot fewer players take the approach of, hey, we want to partner with an OEM, someone else's contact center solution. So we see that pretty, there's only a handful of players doing that now, and that's decreasing. What we're seeing more, the other two options we see that are increasing is Microsoft and Zoom, for example, are agnostic. They just say, hey, whatever you've got for contact center, we're providing the UC. We have some nice integrations between some of them, but you can bring whatever you want. Doesn't matter to us. Or we're seeing, and then the third one we're seeing is the native UCaaS solution, or building up their own native CCaaS solution, right? So 8x8's always been in that space. You see RingCentral starting to build out their own, Dialpad's building out more and more of their own, and that's the other growing trend. And so this is an interesting space to keep an eye on because the contact center is obviously part of the communications infrastructure, if you will, for a company, and how that interplays with UCaaS will be pretty interesting to see how that shakes out over the next couple of years. And then the last theme, touched on this one, but Teams. Teams is everywhere, heavily adopted, pervasive from Office 365. A lot of businesses, like this has been a part of, like a vital part of their keeping going during transition to work from home in the pandemic, or just a part of their business for the last couple of years. What would say is it's not quite as well rounded out in some of the feature functionality as some of the other leaders in that really core part of UCaaS, but it's rapidly increasing, and certainly the adoption is unbelievable, right? What we're seeing though is Microsoft taking a pretty nice play, nice in the sandbox approach, as well as the other UCaaS providers. So there's a lot of how do I use Teams with RingCentral, 8x8, etc. A lot of those conversations happening. So it's kind of Teams is doing a lot of the collaboration, bridging together a more traditional UCaaS solution that's maybe bringing in the voice component, and how does that integrate together and provide a kind of a unified experience for my users. So keep an eye on that. Those are the 5 themes. That's what's going on in UCaaS today. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, follow us if you're interested in unified communications and contact center content. Thanks so much.